Good evening, everyone. My name is Mitch Cohen, and welcome to the Northborough Select Board meeting of Monday, September 16th, 2024. The time is 6:02, and I'll call our board to order. Tonight is the first of two special board meetings this week to conduct interviews of candidates for town administrator for when Tim leaves us next month. We have two candidates scheduled tonight. And before we do that, I figured we should, go over a little bit of the process and procedure. I know Julianne had something you wanted to bring up.
Now's a good time?
Sure.
Yeah, so we are recording the meeting tonight, and it occurred to me that for the candidates who are going to be interviewed on Thursday, they could watch the meeting and have a little bit of an advantage over tonight's candidates. So it seems to me that we have two options to make it a fair process. One would be to record but not post the recording until Friday after all of the interviews, or we could make very sure that on Thursday night the candidates get different questions than the candidates are going to get tonight. So this is just my personal opinion, but I think it's an important enough point to bring up, and I wonder what my fellow select board members think about that.
I could add a little bit of technical information because I brought this idea up. So we are live streaming now. I did check with Owen earlier from the cable department for folks who don't know who Owen is at home. And if we opt to not live stream, he can turn that off and still continue to record the meetings, and then the meeting would be held until we want to release it, probably after Thursday. The downside of that, the public doesn't get to watch and see unless they are here in person. When Tim and I had this discussion about whether or not to stream it, my thought was streaming is better. I'd rather opt on the side of giving the public the opportunity to see the candidates, and if they had feedback for us, they could give us feedback between now and when we finalize deliberations.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
But then we have to consider keeping the process is
sure. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that if we wanted to, we could stop the live stream and still record. And on the questions, there is no, because these are all open interviews, there is no obligation for us to ask the exact same question of all candidates. We have a number of draft questions before us. We can ask from that set, and we would need like a 3-hour interview to ask everybody every question. And also we can ask custom questions if we see somebody on their resume and one of us wants to ask about that or a particular experience, we can do that. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to ask different questions.
Well, I have to agree with Julianne. I think for everybody it would be nicer to have it all at the end of the Thursday, and then everybody can watch it at the same time, whether the public wants to watch it, as well as anybody that was interviewed. I think I like the questions. I like the opportunity to ask the questions, and I think the more we have available to ask, I think that feels better. This way we'll have to watch the questions so that we aren't asking the same, and I do believe that it would make the applicants feel more comfortable, certainly the first two. Maybe the last three doesn't matter because they'd have the option. But I think when you're doing something like this, it would be a much better way to have, as Julianne says, hold the video until Thursday after the interviews.
Not sure if that's what you were suggesting. I think you said that was one option.
That's one option.
The video.
Can I ask for a clarification?
Absolutely.
So I definitely understand the need for the ability to have that unbiased approach, but a couple of people had emailed me today that wanted to attend the meeting but were unable to, and they are logged into the YouTube to watch it, and I just fear that I understand from a candidate perspective, but then from an accessibility for the public.
Yeah, no. This is why I'm bringing it up. So
I love that you brought it up.
Yeah, that we can all.
Was there any reason why they can't watch it on Thursday?
They wanted to watch it tonight.
Well, still, you're going to have to watch the other group too. So it's like, why? I think that we really have to consider the fact that you should have an unbiased offering to the candidates. The people are definitely for watching. would have to watch the other three as well before they can really come up with something that they might like to talk about, if they had something to offer, as opposed to now, and then we're watching the other three and then making that again. So,
Is it sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Is it possible for us to stream just to Northborough Cable for people that are watching from home and not release the recording?
I
Not supposed to?
don't know if that's technically
Okay.
possible or not. I think a lot of people watch on YouTube.
Yes.
My guess is more people watch,
Okay.
many more people watch live on YouTube than live on Northborough Cable.
Okay.
But that's just a guess.
So, I mean, I think the fairest way to do it to the candidates is to not live stream. I understand, to live stream so people can watch and see it, but if we're going to release everything Thursday night or Friday morning, you could always view it at that time. I think to be most fair to all the candidates, there's certainly a lot of job interviews I've been on where I wish I could have gotten a preview, of maybe not the exact questions, but who's interviewing, how they are, it can give someone an advantage, and I don't want to disadvantage the two going this evening. Or even say, the depending on the order, that Thursday. So, I think we should pause the live recording and just release all the interview recordings, Thursday night, Friday morning,
You think
to be fair.
There's a benefit lost by the public in not being able to see things between now and then? Or you think part of that is, are we going to make our deliberations? I think the plan was make our deliberations probably on Thursday after the 3 interviews. And people would, in theory, see those live, but would not have seen tonight's.
Well, and that's a hard date, making a decision and deliberation on Thursday.
Well,
You don't have to, right? I mean, that's the goal, and it's completely up to you. You might want to have 2 or 3 candidates back. You might have more questions for those folks. You may bring them back through, or 1 or 2. So,
Oh, I think I see what you're saying. That's another option, that would, all of the interviews get posted on the website on, let's say, Friday morning, but deliberation happens on Monday night, and that's, of course, public.
Yeah, because we have a meeting.
We have a
that
meeting
next
Yeah,
Monday.
Monday.
meeting Monday.
So,
ideally, making the recommendation to appoint on the 23rd would be great.
yeah, I mean, even without obviously starting our first interview, I would probably like to have that extra time till that Monday meeting to make a hard decision. I mean, I don't mean to get ahead of things, but just something to consider with whether or not we want to pause the live feed tonight.
procedural question, I think we had talked about choosing 1 or 2 people to have them come in and meet staff before we make a conditional offer of employment. So my preference would be to continue with that, and maybe if we don't live stream tonight or Thursday and we deliberate Monday, that deliberation is to narrow it down. Potentially, we might only want to move 1 forward, but not to make an offer. Then it would be 1 or 2 to bring in to meet staff. And then we would have to set up another follow-up meeting to that. I think what you had suggested to me is Thursday, we choose a couple, and then potentially even Friday, they
Yeah.
come in.
Because one of your candidates is getting married, going on a
Oh, yeah.
honeymoon pretty,
Yep.
the next week.
Yep,
If he was to be one of them.
right,
I have no idea.
okay.
So I don't mind the idea of pausing deliberation until Monday and allowing people that want to watch the interviews to be able to access them before we deliberate, just so that they can share any feedback. I think that would be a fair compromise that would be good for the candidates and for the public. I really appreciated their feedback the last time we did this.
Yep.
And I always I know that we had talked a lot about having more engagement in the interview process. So I think this would balance both of those.
Remind me, how was it done last time? Was it interviews over multiple nights and they were
The
live?
finalist interviews were 1 night and decision made immediately thereafter.
Okay. So there weren't multiple nights of like initial round interviews?
Correct. I
Okay.
have seen that in other towns. During the finalist interviews for us last time, there were two of the candidates that were finalists in other towns, and I was watching some of those other interviews also, and some of those did go multiple nights.
Okay. And just to clarify, I'm not necessarily against deliberation on Thursday after all the interviews are done, but I think maybe a final decision or something, a up or down vote on where we're gonna land, maybe I'd be more comfortable on a Monday, doing that at the Monday meeting, but
And
I
you
also
would
don't wanna-
stream, if I may, you would stream deliberations after interview was concluded. You could start up the stream at that point on Thursday, that's
Whatever.
reasonable, right?
sure,
Yeah,
that
sure.
could be live
Yeah.
streamed.
I mean, I don't think there's even anything wrong with just live streaming the entirety of Thursday, because
Yeah, 'cause
those are the end of the
there's no-
interviews.
Unless candidate 3 at 8:30 is outside watching. But we've asked them not to participate
Okay.
like that. And it'd be very tough, given the questions that given this board, in terms of your ability to read people, they're not gonna pull the wool over your eyes that they have canned questions ready to go.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about candidates watching the video of meetings beforehand. But that's okay, all right. We don't have to formally vote on this, just rough show of hands, who would prefer to stop the live stream tonight?
Can we just, and then if anybody does want to come, it is an open meeting, there are people
Yeah.
here, so if you want to come down, you're
Yeah.
welcome to.
Yeah.
But yes, otherwise
right.
I think this is,
Owen, I think you've probably heard this. Could you stop the live stream for both YouTube and cable, but continue the recording and let us know when we're ready?
thank you.
Sure.
I'll get your candidate, is that, I'll compare her to.
Yeah, is there anything we wanted to ask or we wanted to discuss before we bring the first candidate in? So it'll be similar to last time. Mike, I know you weren't on the board last time. You probably watched the interviews. They'll come in, I'll ask them to introduce themselves, tell us something about themselves that maybe isn't obvious or wasn't on their application documents. And then we go in some order, maybe Julianne, Lisa, Mike, Laura, and then back to me for questions. And then after we do about an hour of that, then I will ask them to ask us any questions that they want to ask and close it out. Sound good? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, one thing, originally on the agenda, it said deliberation tonight,
Which is optional. If,
so would we just tell them that we're not gonna do that tonight, or the
yeah, I
public,
mean,
general public?
it's on the agenda. I think Tim suggested it to me, put it on there, because I initially said, get rid of it. And then you said, well, in case we fall in love with someone tonight, we wanted to preserve the option of just doing it. But,
And the candidates all know what my intent was creating the agenda.
Okay, well, I'm just saying for the general public, because they, now it's not live streamed anymore, well, it won't be.
general public isn't watching anymore anyway.
Well, but I think we should all agree that we're not going to deliberate
I
tonight,
th-
because that should be public, right?
Yes, I agree.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Would anyone be offended if I turned off that fan? It's making me hard to hear, particularly Lisa. Okay,
I agree.
okay?
Yes, please. Thank you.
No, the AC is not working, you might have to take your jacket for a change, instead of keeping it on and staying on.
Most comfortable seat in the house.
Oh, wow, this is special. Hi, everyone.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for participating, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know we met briefly beforehand. My name is Mitch Cohen, and I'm happy to serve as chair of the Northborough Select Board. Welcome. Why don't we, you can see everybody's name, but do we want to quickly introduce ourselves around
Sure.
in our role? Okay?
Sure. I'm Laura. I've been on the board now. This is in my second year of my first term. I look forward to getting to know you tonight, and thanks for applying.
Thank you.
Sure, we can go that way.
Diane Waggle, Assistant Town Administrator.
I'm Tim McInerney, we've talked a number of times.
Yeah.
I'm the town administrator.
Hi, Stephanie. I'm Mike Tejan. I'm the newest member of the board elected this year.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Hi, Stephanie, I'm Lisa. I am the oldest, thank you. I'm the fashionista of the crowd. I come in with all sorts of things, and people go, oh my God, what are you wearing now?
See, you're different. That's good. I like it.
Julianne Hirsch, I'm starting my third term.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And my understanding is you prefer Steph?
It doesn't matter, but
Okay.
everyone seems to call me Steph, so I just go with it. That's great, yeah.
I'll try to do that. So Steph, we've all read your application documents. I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell us why you're applying for this position as the town administrator here in Northborough, and maybe add anything either that you think we should know about you or something that might not be obvious from the application documents.
Sure. As you read from my resume, I was a former Town of Northborough employee. I was with the Health Department from 2015 through 2017. And that gave me a lot of access in town to work with the businesses. I used to conduct the food inspection, so I was close with the business owners. I used to run public health programs, so I would be working with the churches. I would be in the school system. So I felt that I already had that tight-knit community, and fortunately, as I was driving through, not a lot changed, so that was fortunate for me, but we'll see what plans you have for the future. And I remember John Codere was town administrator at the time, and I discussed with him I want to get into town management, and he was very supportive. I started taking my master's in public administration when I was here, and then the opportunity came about in Holden for an assistant town manager. I lived in Rutland at the time, so I jumped on the opportunity, and I've been learning ever since, and it's been great, really great.
Thank you. Julianne, you want to take the first question?
Sure. So my first question is, how would you handle a situation where a department or employee under your control is underperforming?
Well, there could be personal reasons, there could be professional reasons within their department. I would privately take them aside, I'd discuss it with them, I'd try to get to the root of the problem. I've learned the best thing to do is to listen to people, and usually what they're coming in with isn't really what the true problem is. So we're able to work it out and hopefully fix the problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lisa?
Okay. Let's see. I guess kind of along her line, it said, how have you managed the appointment and removal of department heads in your previous roles, if you have, and what approach would you take here in Northborough?
The appointment
Or removal?
Or removal. Okay, yes, so I'm the assistant town manager as well as the HR director, so I have a definitive role in whether or not we appoint or we terminate. I can say I'm very fortunate. We have not had any department heads terminated. God bless you.
Excuse me.
I would just look at their history in the department, how hard they've worked, projects they've worked on, if I'm going on the appointing end, how well they work as a department head in managing their department, because there have been issues in the past with that. They could be amazing at their job. They could be the experts in whatever they do, but they don't manage well. So maybe I wouldn't appoint them right away. There's HR courses that we give to our department heads that need a little bit of time. There's a great program, Mark Way, I don't know if you've heard of him, but it's a leadership program. It's usually around, right now it's in Wellesley. He's holding one in, I believe, in a month. And it conditions a new department head to get ready to be a leader and to manage their department, because without those HR skills, they might not be successful as a department head. And it's unfortunate because they know their job like the back of their hand, but it's the people part of it that really can be the caveat sometimes. And termination, we take copious notes, as you might know, in public government. It's not a private industry. You can't just say, oh, no, you're fired. It's a verbal warning, a written warning, a 2-day suspension, then maybe a 5-day suspension, and you need to take copious notes. So with that, we would be following this employee anyway. And of course, there's counseling that goes along with it. This is, why you were given a verbal. This is why you had a write-up. You have to be very clear of your expectations and very clear of the process moving forward. If this should happen again, then you might be faced with a suspension. So if it got to that point, there's something wrong. It's usually the person doesn't want to be there anyway, whether mentally or they're not able to personally. We would work with them as best as we could, but at the end of the day, the person is an adult. We need the person to perform. We're a full organization, and there's only so much we can do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Steph, can you describe a situation where you had to make a difficult decision involving the allocation of town resources and how you came to that decision?
Caved?
Came to that.
I was like, okay. Yeah, actually, I can think of a perfect scenario. There is a dam in town. It's a lake. There's a community that lives right along the lake. It's a condominium. And the dam is owned by 3 different owners. One is a developer in town, one is somebody else that is in and out of town, and then one lives across the country. Well, it used to be fine because the Department of Conservation and Recreation would maintain the dams. I think it was about 5 years ago, they slowly started sending letters to dam owners saying, this is your responsibility, we're out, there's not enough state funding. And so there was a problem with the dam. They were losing water, and that is basically their aesthetic scenery that's around their condo area, and people used to come to the beach. It was a beach years ago, and the kids would go swimming. I wouldn't recommend swimming in that right now, but it's still very pretty to drive by. So they came to us, many people, probably like I would say 25 people into a Board of Selectmen meeting, and they said, hey, what can you do to help us? And we said, oh, of course, we'll look into it, we understand. We actually own the old beach area, not the water. That doesn't belong to the town. It's just like up until the sand, and there's an old playground right now. There was a trail network that people tend to keep up. And so we said, let us look into it. We went to town meeting, and we were able to get everybody to vote for a feasibility study. So we conducted the feasibility study. Guess how much the dam was to repair? Like
$3 million.
No, it was like $9 million. So we said, with our priority list right now, there's no way we can do this. We made sure the DCR was involved. They discussed, a temporary Band-Aid with the owners. And then with that, we had to step away and say, this is private property. It's not our property. If the town's people want to repair it, great, but everyone, once they figured out the number, they were like, wow, that's a lot. I don't know if I want to take that on. So instead, we went out for a grant. They said they would be happy enough with revitalizing that beachfront area. So we conducted, we're in the process still of the feasibility study. So we intend to put a new playground there, have someone cut through all the trails because it attaches to another trailhead in town, and clean up the water and make sure that, everything looks pretty. You can play there, you can spend time there, but other than that, that's all we could do for them. They seemed like they were happy because, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and they were persistent, and we did what we can do. Right now, the dam, the repair has worked, the water has come up again. They have a problem with beavers, but Yeah, there's, again, yeah, you're not ever going to make everybody happy, but what you have to do is the research, show them that you're looking into it, show them the data, and tell them why you can help them in one way and where you can't in another. And, you know, it's, like I said, everybody is not gonna be happy all of the time, but you just do the best you can do, and you know what is important to a town.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Laura?
Thank you. I loved that answer. Thank you. So we're our town charter is an important, well, it's important to all of our municipalities, but how do you ensure compliance with your town's bylaws, especially, you know, in your administrative role and the legal requirements associated with it?
Well, we just actually, we went through the Community Compact grant to do a comprehensive update to our zoning bylaws, because that was the problem. We had uses in towns, like farms were holding wedding events, and in our bylaws, it's not legal. But they were based on years ago, before agro-tourism and all of the events started happening. So we said, we need to, it was filled with amendments, and it was hard to read.
Yeah.
It was, for the normal person trying to read through our zoning bylaw, it was just, it was difficult. So we ended up pairing with Mark Bobrowski, do you know him? He's amazing. He's a guru in land use. I drag him to Northborough, but I think he's retiring. You can copy Holden's when it's done. So he's amazing, and we're going through it piece by piece. I'm on the committee, and a planner, a person from zoning, a resident, and then we have a selectman as a liaison. And it's funny, you needed a typewriting company permit, just the funny things we're coming across, and, you know, that just doesn't take place anymore. But we're learning a lot about uses and really following our bylaws and regulations as they stand today, because there's so many books that just sit on a shelf, and you know, you almost take it for granted unless somebody challenges you or da-da-da. Well, yeah. There's ways to go about it, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, if we hired you
Yes.
as our next town administrator, you would need to come on board and assess the operations of the town and all of the various departments that would be reporting to you, and then communicate that with the select board of any concerns, anything you thought needed to get changed structurally or financially or anything else. We would be in a unique role in that you've worked here and you know a number of our employees. Tell me a little bit about how you would go through that process of onboarding and any of the unique advantages and or challenges it would be the fact that you've worked with some of these people before as a peer, and now you'd be the boss.
I don't think it would be a problem that I was a peer and now the boss, because I was the health director. I was working in my own department. I functioned then how I would function now. Fortunately for that position, you're always integrated with the DPW for water and sewer, the building department because of housing problems, you know, accounting because of your grants or your budget. So I think, if anything, it would create a better environment, a trusting environment. The staff has been in the board through a little transition. So I think a familiar face and someone that they trust and somebody that they know is a positive leader would be a benefit. But what I would do is go around separately to the departments, ask them where they're at with plans for the future, goals that you have, so I could catch up on what has already been done, so we're not, you know, duplicating efforts, and then report back to the board of anything that, you know, we might do differently, although I'm sure, you know, for the most part, up until now, you have a good, clear understanding of where you need to be and the goals that are in front of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Julianne?
So, you know, finances is a major part of running a town.
Oh, yeah.
And my question is, how would you keep the select board informed about the financial condition and needs of the town?
So, right now, we're starting, well, it's October. We usually, in most towns, start their capital planning, and they go around from department to department, asking them to write their priorities and why they need these things, and are there any alternatives? What would happen if you didn't have these things? So we have kind of a good scope on what the necessities are. Never mind the fact the department head meeting, which usually we hold one once a month, and that's just separate compared to, you know, working on a project with the board. But at that time, department heads go around and they tell us basically what they're working on, what their intentions are, but financially, budget season is when we start to zone in on the new changes coming up. Whether or not it's staff changes, we need to know that. Do you need to add someone? Are you losing someone? Do you need to refill the position? Why? We just purchased ClearGov. It's a financial software for municipalities, and the funny story is, in 2015, a man just went to his public hearing, his budget hearing in his town, and nothing made sense to him. He was like, this is so silly. I don't understand. Like, where's their revenue? Where's their expenditures? So he created this software, ClearGov, and it's great because you can upload from 20 years back. If you have the data on one server, you can upload it into the system, and you have true data to show, you know, increases, basically even call volume. You can even integrate union contracts into it. So in, you know, a 3-year contract, every, you know, in the year 6, it went up by, you know, 25%. Why? What happened? Was there a major change with the department? So you can see that statistical data, but better than that, it's so clear and concise for our constituents. They can read it seamlessly. We have our department heads prepare a small report of their department, what they're doing, projects they're working on. So you'll just click right down, the building department, this is what they do. You'll see their financial data. You can choose to put all of your data in a graph of your choice. It could be a pie chart, it could be a graph chart, so it's more streamlined. With that, to your question, you can print off reports. So it's much easier than me sitting with an Excel spreadsheet and, you know, writing down, you know, any changes financially. I could just print off a report by department, by even project type capital expenses that we're looking at budgeting. So it's a great software. We just used it this current fiscal year. And so next, you know, fiscal year 26 will be our second time using it. But, you know, we've been using it throughout the year, just looking at capital expenses that still are unspent that we need to spend. And it would be an update, I would believe, at your typical monthly hearings. I would go through, first of all, our department head meetings and what's going on with them and their department, any projects, and as well as any financial information that I have that could be different. But the brunt of it you'll find out during budgetary meetings.
Sounds like a great solution.
Yeah, it's just, and it's transparent, so it's right there and it's easy to read. I think people would enjoy it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And on that note, we just experienced for the first time a financial summit where we got everybody together in the departments in one room, and they came up and said all the things that they wanted, and that they were looking forward to do for the future, which I thought was great, because now we have a global picture. In the past, it's always been a very isolated department situation that we didn't really hear a lot of.
Right.
And I think that, I think people have to realize that this is a whole community, it's a whole need. It's not, well, you really need this, well, I really need this, well, then how are we gonna compromise? Because you're not gonna get necessarily 8 new people. You
Right.
might need 1 here and 2 there and 3 there, but you're gonna take 3 people as opposed to that, and just kind of spread the wealth a little bit.
Yep.
So, so I thought that that was a great start, and this sounds like a way to project to,
Right.
to the residents of how this is all, putting it all together.
Right.
And I think I'd certainly like to keep that ball rolling, because I think that's what we have to do. We've, in the past, seen a lot of non-spending for our municipal buildings are in very, very sad condition for not being maintained for many, many years. So now we have to fix that, and we want new buildings, and we want, more room that people need, because they're expanding in their size of the departments. And how would you take that ball and then go to the next level with that?
Well, we had the same problem in Holden, and our DPW used to, well, they still do, they handle facilities and, any repairs. We of course hire outside consultants for more major problems, but we got to the point, we said, our buildings are in disrepair, we need to get on this, but there were no bodies to do it. So last town meeting, the voters approved a building facilities manager. So it would be their job exclusively to go around to our town buildings, write down anything that they see is in disrepair, come up with a plan, of course, our options that we have, whether it's vinyl side, unfortunately, well, or fortunately, we have historic buildings in Holden, so you're not allowed to vinyl side, so it's tough. It's more expensive to fix. Vinyl siding is actually cheaper sometimes than repairing like the wood slats, like the.
We've had some related conversations.
Oh,
on
okay,
this.
right. So the shingles.
Listen to a few of our meetings.
Yeah, it's so funny. So, yeah, but we're excited. We are collecting resumes now, and we're about to hire somebody. We actually offered the position, and unfortunately, they said, you know what? I don't know if I want to work anymore. So, I don't know what the issue was. But anyway, we're on the hunt. So I would recommend that.
We've done that.
Okay.
We're actually a little bit ahead of the game on that.
Oh,
We've got a
good.
new facilities manager, is it 2 years?
Well, and that's the
Into
thing.
Second year, a study was done, there's now something in place computerized to say, you need a new light bulb or whatever.
Right.
But there's still some major stuff that
Right,
now needs
so
addressed.
that's a course on your capital plan, and it happens to every town. You have it for year 2027, here comes 2027, and then you're like, oh, we need a new ladder truck. So it does happen, but you do have to stick to the capital plan unless there's a dire emergency, because it's funny if you look at your capital plan and economic development, nobody will want to come to a town that's run down and just doesn't look nice. So if you don't keep up with it, and we're cognizant of that as well, we have to stick to our plan. Something always creeps up, but you just do the best job you can. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So, right, and you obviously know this as in your current position, but town administrator, right, is working with and answering to and working problems with staff and department heads, select board members, and the citizens of the town. So how do you sort of balance and work out those competing priorities? How do you keep them organized? Just kind of want to know a little bit about that.
So it's easier if it's a department head, because I can schedule meetings. If a person's coming in, a resident, I pretty much have an open door policy unless I'm in a meeting. That's first priority. But, so I guess I would put residents first. I would schedule department heads, Board of Selectmen. We usually have a date to talk, or, a meeting set up anyway. So it's pretty much scheduling and upon how the priorities come in. And I just have been doing it for a long time. I have a lot of energy, fortunately. So I'm able to keep up, and I don't find it difficult.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Laura.
Thank you. So, in your view, what would you say are the most important qualities of a town administrator, and how do you embody those qualities?
You have to be positive. You have to like people, and I don't say that with, funny. You really do have to enjoy working with people, and I'm a people person. You have to keep people on track. You have to know how to delegate. You have to be trustworthy enough that somebody respects you. You have to respect other people. And you have to be able to have that energy to drive your team. Like, this is exciting, let's do it, all on board, and hopefully they'll buy in. But for the most part, it's just lead by example and treat people the way you would want to be treated. And everybody knows there's accountability anywhere. Yeah, I would be accountable to the board's accountable to the ballot box, bless you.
Thank you.
The department heads are accountable to me, their staff is accountable to them. So everybody knows in local government, it's a team situation. We all have to collaborate and work together. And, God bless you.
It's contagious.
Like, maybe it was my perfume. But yes, knock on wood, it has been, it's because I have the HR background as well as the management end, it's pretty seamless. There are problems, but I think at this point I know how to deal with the problems, and hopefully, yeah, it'll be good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, at the beginning, when you sat down, you made some mention of the town really hasn't changed all that much
Right.
in the last 6.5, 7 years since you've worked here. You could look at that as a positive.
Well, that's what I said, yeah. I was like, well, I don't know if you like that or not, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have had some discussions about improving primarily the downtown as far as economic development initiatives. We currently do not have anyone directly responsible for. We don't have an economic development coordinator or an economic development committee. How would you want to go forward with figuring out the right ways of improving the economic situation, combination of tax base and what I refer to as quality of life businesses,
Right.
in terms of improvement of that?
Yes, I looked at your master plan, and it's not much different. A lot of people have problems with their downtown, and they want to revitalize it. It seems in the comments from the residents in the master plan, there's lack of connectivity between, one building to another. And in Holden, we have a village district called Jefferson. It's part of Holden. It's like Cherry Valley. Same thing was happening. And then we had a developer come in, which knocked down an old mill building, and they created nice condominiums. So with that, we said, okay, there's more people, there's more life. We want to do something with this. How can we? So while we're doing our zoning comprehensive update, we looked at our zoning map and sat with Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. They looked at why we have so many spotted areas of residential and commercial and why it's hurting us. So what we did is decide to come up with a village center district overlay zone. So when I say overlay zone, you could have, like I said, residential spots, commercial spots, kind of dabbled in one section. You just take a blanket, those still remain the same, but you take a blanket and you can call it mixed use. So that commercial property could have a rental on top. the home right here could have, you know, an addition with a cute little craft store. So it's just little tweaks like that can help. And they did a rendering for us, Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. It's great because people want to see something tangible. You can talk about it until you're blue in the face or try to explain something and people don't understand, but they came up with this beautiful rendering, and I think that's how we had it passed at town meeting. And the potential that was there, I was blown away just looking at, we have a current development, there's a restaurant in the middle, and all they did is they put in sidewalks, they put in shade trees, so it looked more livable and welcoming. They put in a little coffee shop. Of course, this is just on paper, but that's the potential. So an inventory list is huge in a town. If you look at, okay, your commercial businesses, where are the vacancies? Where are the abandoned properties? Even, you know, on the residential side, how many more people could come into town and impact our infrastructure, water, sewer, the school system, and you have to take all of that together and figure out what the best businesses are. Some stable, they call them recession-proof businesses, are like storage buildings, the tenant-owned offices, the medical buildings, even real estate buildings are known to be more recession resistant. So you could fill those areas in right away with that, but you want to zone in more on what would work with Northborough and look at, like I said, your water sewer capacity and things that can really affect it. Like we had in Medway, a business wanted to come into the industrial park, but it took a lot of water because they were cooling off big mechanics. So we didn't have that capacity enough to draw off of the town system in order to make that industry work. So you really do have to really consider the businesses coming in and what you want to see. In the master plan, it was pretty much the majority of people love the agriculture, they like the recreational open space areas, and they like the small, cute little commercial shops. But of course, there's the perfect place, Northborough Crossing, you have all your big box companies, and that's fine. Why? Because it's not pedestrian friendly anyway. There's cars zinging back and forth, and it's more so off of a highway. So that's an important resource as well. But creating an inventory list so it's posted somewhere. Kudos to the planner, though. There's a great brochure on, she must have 2 pages, like an economic development page and a planning page. It was on our economic development page, but there's a great brochure. It says, come see the assistant town manager if you'd like to look into bringing your business to Northborough. It gave, you know, that we're a single tax rate community, which is huge for a business, and that's probably why right now you're thinking, oh, you know, we're not that stable, but you're 75-25. So you've remained there, and it's probably because they're able to come in and not get hit hard. There's tax increment financing, I'm sure you know about, that you could work with a company. And we did this in, was it Medway or? No, Rutland. We were trying to get some, I was selectman at the time, and we had 80 acres of property that Rutland's landlocked. It's in the middle of town, so it's not off the highway. And we tried and tried and tried, so one plan was to offer tax increment financing, and we couldn't afford for it to be tax-free for X amount of years, so we did like a 75%, then 50, then 25, and yeah, so there's ideas. Of course, the chamber is always good to connect with because they have the word out. That's their job. There's a ton of business alliances. There's Mass Housing and Development has a downtown initiative that you could work with them and hopefully come up with a plan and see the fiscal impact and be able to make decisions off of that. But yeah, there's many things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Julianne?
So, social media is a big thing.
Mhm.
How do you think the town's responsibility is managing social media and getting information out? And, do you have experience in that in Holden and?
Yes, so we have, now, these days you can connect everything, so you can connect your Facebook to Instagram to Twitter. So we have a town main page, and we have 8,000 followers on that. So it goes to show you that we're getting traction. We can put links from other, if, let's just say, the senior center is holding something, so we put a link, like, right to their page. Hey, see here, because we get the most following. So we'll have that one place where people know that they can come. And if there's anything that's very important, because of course you have to think of the population that will not touch a computer, some people don't even have a cell phone. So we make sure with utility mailings, we get the word out, or we have the big electronic signs. Honestly, not a lot of people read our newspaper anymore, but we'll put a blurb in the newspaper. It's more, like you said, social media driven. So we make sure the residents know this is the one place you go. We put that on the sign. We put it, like I said, in the flyer that we mail out. So it's important people know where to go. We'll leave brochures if there's an important meeting. One thing we learned is if you need to get the word out and you want to breach a subject before town meeting, have the public forums, have everybody in, try to hash it out before they get to town meeting. And a lot of it is just educating the person. It's educating them on the beginning of the project to the end of the project, how and if they'll be impacted, what the positive points of doing something is, and usually they understand, they can ask their questions. And Tim, that was great. Tim did a pre-budget video for a town meeting, and he went warrant article by warrant article, and he had the town department heads come in if it was their warrant article. That's so much easier for people to understand. It's like I was talking about the zoning bylaw. It's just Greek to people. So I believe more video, more social media, getting out there I just did we call it Coffee With. I know it's so original. But it's at our senior center, so we'll have a topic, and it could be anything. We could have a lawyer come in and talk about, anything with the seniors, but it's opened up to all demographics. So ours last Wednesday was what if, and it was about planning and projects that are, moving forward, and we're actually trying to redevelop some brownfield sites. So there were a lot of questions on that, and we're putting in new turf fields, and that's how we're trying to generate income too, because I'm sure you guys probably have the same issue with fields being just exhausted. Either they need to be maintained because they're yellow and fried and overused, or so we ended up spending some ARPA money, and we purchased, we're installing turf fields right now, but we're going to be renting them out, and that's going to be part of a huge recreation facility with trails and a pavilion and a snack shack, and it was a long time coming. But get the word out, because that's how half of our projects are pushed positively. It's people need to feel like they have say in what's going on, as they should. This is who we work for, the people of the town. So yeah, it's a good positive.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lisa?
I like that answer.
Oh, good.
Okay, going back to my sheet here. How do you ensure that all laws, town charters, and votes are faithfully carried out by the officers under your supervision?
Okay, so meaning when
I
people
know-
are sworn in? What, say it again, sorry.
No, how do you ensure that all laws, town charters, and votes are faithfully carried out by the officers under your supervision? So in the case of something coming before town meeting, and I'm assuming, I didn't write this, I'm reading this,
Okay, yeah.
that you're at town meeting and the voters said, you know, X, Y, Z, we want this to happen. And then it comes back to, say, the board, and I'm assuming officers mean the board, is that correct?
Yeah, just basically to narrow it down, is just how do you hold folks accountable for their roles? That's what the intent of the question is. How do you hold people accountable for their roles?
Oh,
And maybe that's oversimplifying, but that was the essence
Okay, on
of,
that note, and again, for an example, and I'm actually
Yeah.
gonna use this example because we brought it up quite a bit here now. We have a police station that, 2 years ago had got, a town meeting vote for $70,000 to repair and paint the building. And, halfway, it was supposed to be done by June 30th. But then by July, it hadn't been done, and August came, and September came, I was like, what happened? And it was, well, we're gonna vinyl side it. It's like, well, that's not what you voted for at town, that's not what voted for at town meeting. This is what was voted for, this was the amount. So we brought it back to town meeting again, another presentation was made. This time it was $540,000 to vinyl side the building. And everybody went, wait, 70, 540? Wait a minute, that's a huge, and how long are we gonna have this building, and that sort of thing. So the next question then was to say, okay, now that you've come, the town meeting said, no, we don't want that. We don't want to spend more than 200,000 and add that 70 that you got the year before. That's your limit. That's what we want to have happen. So, and then transferring that back to us making sure that that happens. So that's the question, I suppose, to say to Tim's accountability.
yeah,
Like, how far are you supposed to carry?
right.
What-
Well,
what you're told?
it's very important that projects are carried out timeline-wise, because if you, let's just say you bonded a project, you could go into arbitrage if you didn't spend the money within a certain amount of time, because you're going to a bank and you're saying, hey, yep, this project will be finalized by da-da-da, phase 1 will be done by da-da-da. So it is important, and that's one of the reasons why we hired this person. So the person not only would be in charge of the buildings and making sure that everything's written down from soup to nuts, what needs to be repaired, but it's also to manage the procurement end, and that's where a lot of stalling comes in, whether or not it's waiting for materials and the materials didn't come in, or it's waiting for a contractor that never showed up. So it's very detailed, and you need at least one person on top of it at all times. And we got into a few instances where projects were not being done on time, as the police station. And of course, taxpayers are like, why isn't this money spent yet? Wasn't the foundation supposed to be in the ground? We just finished our brand-new DPW building last year, and we were behind about, I'd say, a half a year. It was due to materials being slowed, but the steel, we were waiting on the steel, and so it kind of pushed everything out. But a schedule, meetings, we ended up having weekly meetings, right, we had a building committee, but we also had an internal meeting every, once a week, and we would go through the checklist, okay, this isn't done, how can we expedite this, who can we get out there to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, if you think of a project with your house, you're adding on a deck, that's hard enough, but these projects are huge. So, yeah, you have to stay on top of it. And, of course, usually big projects will have an outside committee, but internally, you need to stay on top of it to make sure that nothing's slipping through the cracks. It's easy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And to kind of follow up on that, just kind of curious, has there been a project or something where right, things just didn't go right. Things went sort of really wrong, or the outcome wasn't what you tried to get for. Just curious if you have something to describe, or.
I'm trying to think of, let's see. Oh, yeah, I got one. Okay. So, a group in town got together and they wanted to put in a inclusive playground. So it's fully ADA compliant, and we jumped on it. We said, great. We went to the state. They gave us an earmark for $50,000. So they completed their feasibility study, a rough design. And then the committee decided to expand this. So not only was it a playground, but then it was, a walking track. It was, everything was, impervious and flat and smooth, and they wanted the basketball court. So all of this equates to money, right? So we started with a small playground, and now it's a big project. So they, the committee said, oh, no, that's what we came to you for. We were going to do this big project. And we said, no, our executive order, because we have executive orders of any projects that we put forward with the committees, and it's right here, just a playground. That's fine, but you have to add that to your other projects, right? So I just applied for a $250,000 grant through the Mass Office of Disability. Praying we get it. It'll help us go a little bit further. It's a great resource to have in town, and we are incorporating that portion in our Dawson recreation area, the big turf fields in that section. But this is its own, and it will be state of the art. So we're excited about it, but that was not in the plan. It just extrapolated. It's a good thing, but people don't understand that everything takes planning step by step. We had a person petition $50,000 for a feasibility study to expand the senior center. Now, the senior center, although I think it's 15 years old, it was one of our newer buildings in town. We have the senior center, and then we have the public safety building that fortunately the debt is going to fall off by another year and a half. So we'll be good with that, and then we can move forward. And the town manager had to stand up at town meeting and say, although this is great, we support our seniors in every way we can, this would be wasted money because we're not there yet. We have so many other projects before this project that you have to wait until you're actually ready to spend the money, because once you have that money and you start the ball rolling, the project's going to, be expedited and hopefully finished in a decent amount of time that people will be satisfied with the result. Here, that would have been $50,000 wasted. We would have conducted the study and then not have gotten to the project for another 2 years or 3 years or maybe even 4 years, because again, it's not a priority right now. And also, we haven't outgrown our senior center, but that's just another point.
Laura. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of needs and not enough money for them.
Yeah.
Transparency is something you'd mentioned a couple of times. How do you balance the need for transparency, and confidentiality when it comes to sensitive town matters?
Well, as you know, it's like town government, it's not in a vacuum, it's public, everything's public record. But before you push anything out to the public, you need to think about how to say it. You need to think about opposing sides. You need to be apolitical. You have to just make sure that you give a reason or an explanation that's conducive to all parties. And so that's the confidential end. If somebody said, oh, let me see your drafted notes, you have to be ready to, you know, give your statement to the public in a proper way and make sure that they understand it, and again, that you're thinking through something thoroughly. And if it's confidential, as in personnel matter, you go into executive session under reason 5 and talk about that, and that is, it's, you know, it's a private matter.
Yeah.
And I also keep a lot of the personnel issues as private as I can anyway. If somebody needs to be spoken with, it's in my office or in their office, and, you know, it's between us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep yourself up to date on changes in public administration? Do you belong to organizations, go to conferences, or a member of ICMA? Do you network with
Yeah.
assistant town administrators, in your case, in neighboring towns?
Yep. Yeah, so I belong to the MMA group, the Mass Municipal Association, and I go to their meetings, the MMHR group, so Mass Municipal Human Resources Group, and I have a great network of assistant town administrators and town managers. I have a lot of contacts through my prior life in Barry, Medway, Northborough, yeah, and so it's a good network of people. I have a lot of connections with the state, whether it be doing grants, federally, and people are just really helpful. It's all of our fields, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel in something, so we say, how do you do it? And did this work for you? And why didn't it work? And so everyone's pretty open. It's a good family. It's because in municipal government, there's no job beneath you. Everybody jumps in and they help out each other, and that is how you operate. There's not one town that says, oh, you know, we're lean on the staff. It's like, well, we are too. So you'll never have enough people, but we're great jugglers. Yeah. You're
We're
welcome.
approaching an hour. Do we want to try to race around one more time if people have questions, or do we want to wrap this up? I don't know if anyone has more burning questions than otherwise.
I guess if Stephanie has questions for
Yeah,
us.
oh yeah, definitely, that'll definitely be part of it, no matter what. I just
Yeah, I
wanna give
don't,
the
I
board-
don't have any additional questions.
Okay, you okay, Julianne?
Yeah.
Please.
I'm okay as well.
Okay, so I'll turn the tables. Are there any questions you would like to ask us? Anything that you were hoping we would ask that we didn't?
I was just wondering, I know the Peasley School you're working on, the fire station, what are some other goals that you have? The town hall?
Town hall.
Well, I know, and I
would
read
be-
about
that would-
White Cliffs being a down-the-line
White
option, or,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are, as far as capital projects,
Yes.
you know, the fire station project is coming to town meeting in October,
Yeah.
and the ballot in November, and hopefully we can get that behind us. And then Peasley, we just had the first meeting of the Peasley Feasibility Study Committee, technically Building Committee,
Oh, good.
last week.
That's
So
good.
that's at the very, very beginning. It's not even technically in feasibility, it's an assessment at this point. So that's, you know, at least a couple of years off before it comes to town meeting. And then in all likelihood, the next large capital project after that would be Town Hall, something to do with, you know, the great people and services in this building, whether it be a renovation expansion of this building or potentially a move to White Cliffs. There's already been a committee that has looked at that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of other needs that are not large capital needs that we've been talking about, everything from economic development, downtown revitalization is a big one. The tremendous number of, you know, financial needs of the town or staff needs of the town that we really should justifiably add more people to do more things, but at the same time, we don't want to overburden the taxpayers, and that's a
Right.
very careful balancing act that we will need somebody strong at the helm to help us figure out how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of that, I was just reading about in February of 2025, they're allowing for accessory dwelling units on existing. So that's more demand on residential. and infrastructure and possibly schools. But they're saying for the most part, a lot of it would almost be an in-law situation, so,
Yeah, we already had an accessory dwelling, I mean, this is more of a planning board issue than select
Right.
board issue, but, you know, we already had an accessory dwelling bylaw. Obviously, the state supersedes that, so there will be additional flexibility, if you will, offered to homeowners to add accessibility, accessory dwellings as
Right.
of February. We've already, as a town, given a lot of thought to residential needs of the community. We are an MBTA adjacent community, so we had to and successfully did pass an overlay district, a couple of overlay districts, so that is behind us. A number of towns are still struggling with that. I'm glad we got that out of the way. Where you are now, I don't think you are you
we're
considered
in
because
abutting.
of Worcester? Yeah,
Because of
yeah.
Worcester, yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, so we worked with CMRPC, and actually, part of our grant, the zoning grant, the tail end is to implement the actual GIS map into our zoning.
So have you passed the zoning overlay at this point already?
Not past it,
Okay.
no, because we're figuring out our zoning first. We didn't want to put the cart before the horse.
Gotcha.
And then we'll figure out where to lay the multifamily, yeah.
Got some work ahead of
Yep,
you there.
yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah, how do you best deal with a town administrator, as in daily, weekly? Do you like reports? Do you email, or?
Like reports.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that we're a new board, obviously. We're all pretty much newer than anybody else who's sitting here.
Right.
But we do communicate a lot, and we want that, freedom to do that. So,
Oh, I would expect that, of course. Yeah.
So emailing obviously is something that Tim gets quite often, I'm sure. And, it's so, there's so much that has to be dealt with because it's been put aside for so long.
Yeah.
That, certain residents will come up and, why isn't this, why isn't that, what can you do, on, and each one of us has certain people that come to us all the time.
Oh, of course.
So, so that we would be now saying, okay, how are we gonna work together, how are we gonna get this done, what ideas can we work with that are new, innovation and that sort of thing. So I believe that, that's one of the things that we're looking for, is that open doorways and, communication and such.
Great, thank you.
I would have to say that it's very important particularly at this moment in time, because pandemic kind of stalled all of us.
Yes.
And now we're facing multiple projects, and, A depends on B, depends on C, and so it's, it will demand a lot of thought and a lot of input, and so I think particularly now, while we get the plan together and can see, the future, that communication will be pretty vital.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, I just wanted to say I fell into local government. I was an engineer before in civil engineering, and I would go before planning boards and show my plans. I would go before conservation commissions, and I was like, oh, I like this. I started to volunteer at my hometown boards and commissions, and that kind of hooked me, and with that, I just had the love of municipal government and the people, and it is a great team to work for. There's so many diverse areas involved, and yeah, I would be honored to help Northborough as best as I could and make it beautiful and a positive, friendly, happy place to be.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So procedurally, we have another interview tonight. We have some more interviews on Thursday. And then at the end of that meeting on Thursday, we'll kind of figure out what is next. And, we hope to bring one or two people in to meet some staff. And I know you've already met some of our staff from working here, but there are many you have not met.
Oh, of course.
And we'll figure out that next step and communicate through Tim
Great.
on that.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice job, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tim. So nice to meet you. Yeah, nice to see you, Steph.
Thank you so much.
Great meeting you, Steph.
Thank you so much.
Great to meet you, thank you.
We want to take a break for a couple minutes?
Yes.
No,
I have
because
to go to the ladies' room.
the other person, didn't the other person think they were starting at 7?
7:15.
Oh,
is
7:15.
what we-
So we're
7:15
kinda
is
right-
what we had
almost
on the
right on
agenda.
Yeah,
right?
right on time.
Yeah,
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 I
we're
need to
good.
go pause.
Yeah.
Somehow, we're almost
Yeah,
right on
that's
time.
fine.
So you're taking two? or
Yeah, we'll
three?
take a couple minutes until, at least until Lisa is back. Yeah, beautiful. Hi there.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Mike. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I asked, I'm Mitch.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome, I'm Laura.
Diane, nice to meet you, Austin. Thank you.
Good to see you, Tim.
Again, how are you?
Oh, candy.
Oh. We try to keep everyone well-fed and well-trained. We were just talking about Halloween, and we've got a parade coming up where we traditionally throw candy, and we have plenty of candy, and things like that. So you've had a chance to briefly meet us. The five going in this direction are members of the select board. Diane is the assistant town administrator, and Tim, as you probably know, is the current town administrator, departing in about a month. A matter of fact, exactly a month. So Austin Siganowitz.
You got it?
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe something that's not on your application documents. And this is a good time to tell us anything else that's important that we should know going into the interview.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me here tonight. Appreciate the confidence and putting me forward and having this discussion with you all. My name is Austin Siganowitz. Very fun Polish name to learn when you're a little kid. I grew up in northern central Massachusetts. I grew up in Gardner. Attended Monty Tech for high school, then went on to attend Fitchburg State for political science. My undergraduate education, actually freshman year of undergrad, I was humbled to be elected to the Board of Selectmen in the town of Winchendon. Just at 19 years old, which was a very fun experience. Winchendon at the time was undergoing a significant transition in select board, municipal management. My time on the board, we did a lot of good work in terms of really putting the town of Winchendon on a solid financial ground. We also recruited, very similar, one of my very first meetings was doing what you're doing tonight, in interviewing our next town manager. In the interim, I had an opportunity to meet Bernie Lynch, retired city manager from the city of Lowell. I think he recognized a young individual who was interested in municipal government, and he, I don't know if it's forcibly, recruited me to the municipal management profession. He agreed to mentor and advise me into pursuing a career in local government as a municipal manager. I fell in love and decided I needed to further my skills, my education, my experience. One of my first opportunities was at the software company ClearGov. You may have heard of them, maybe seen them at some MMA meetings or trade shows. I had my first job there was a financial data analyst. I had an opportunity to review audited financial statements, municipal budgets, not just from Massachusetts, but across the country. I'm a little bit of a finance nerd, unfortunately, for better or for worse, so that I really absorbed a lot of the ways that municipal governments across the country do their financial operations. That was really interesting to me. I then pursued an opportunity for the town of Acton as a member of the town manager's executive team as the director of intergovernmental affairs. That was a tremendous experience for me, really developed me as a young professional. I did a lot of great work, I believe, in the town of Acton, really assisting that community with developing a communication strategy, further adopting our town newsletter, social media communications. During the pandemic, I created something that made me world famous, Acton at a Glance. It was just me walking around Lake Quinsigamond talking about the town of Acton. But I also further developed Acton's budget and capital plan and some of our financial transparency tools, actually receiving an award from the Government Finance Officers Association for financial transparency in developing a public financial statement to present to the community. Also received several million dollars in grant and state and federal earmarks for the community for various infrastructure and economic development projects. I took that experience and decided it was time to become, hopefully, a town administrator, where I was successful in just over a year ago becoming town administrator for the town of Rutland. It's been an incredibly productive year in the town of Rutland for the community and me professionally, assisting the community in really the overarching goal of professionalizing their town services. I think the town administrator role is still very new in the town of Rutland, and over the past 18 months, I've really worked to establish that role and work with town staff and the various boards and commissions to professionalize and further that role. Highlighted by establishing Rutland's very first comprehensive set of bylaws. We had nothing, virtually nothing. That's an exaggeration, virtually nothing. But we've adopted a comprehensive set of bylaws that really speak to the governance structure of the town. For example, there was only one sentence in the select board bylaw that referenced the town administrator. Now we have a full bylaw that highlights the responsibilities and duties of that role, and assisted the select board in getting that through, and was just approved by the Attorney General's office. Also established Rutland's budget and capital planning processes. We have our very first budget book and 5-year capital plan. We have our very first set of comprehensive financial management policies. We also have a very first set of personnel policies and an employee handbook that was distributed to all the employees. So really did a lot of work there. One of the things that's really important to me as a working professional is communications and transparency efforts. I'm sure we'll dive into that further in tonight's conversation, but that's highlighted every day in the work that I do. I mentioned it's been a productive year for me professionally. I also, over the summer, was fortunate to marry my best friend. So me personally, I'm looking for some stability and a community that aligns with my personal values and my professional values. That's why I applied for this opportunity, and that's why I'm thankful to be here tonight to talk to you. So a community like Northborough has always been in my plan. A lot of the things that I've learned is actually from the town of Northborough and the work that you've done. So I've long admired the work that you've done here, and I want to continue to build upon that. I think you've done a lot of good work here, and I think that I have the skills and experience and interest to further that and work alongside you as a board, other boards and committees, board and committees, and especially the very talented town staff that you have here.
Great. Thank you, Austin. So we're going to go around the room a couple of times, and folks will ask some questions. And Julianne.
So your last comment is really interesting, that you've observed the good work that we've done here in Northborough, and you want to build on that. So do you have any ideas for the next level? Like,
Yeah.
how would you build on that? What would be your grand ideas?
One of the things that's really important to me, that's a great question. I think I mentioned to you that I'm a little bit of a nerd for local government, especially municipal finance, but local government, so much so that my wife and friends make fun of me. One of my hobbies in my off time is watching other local select board meetings, city council meetings. She's watching tonight, and she'll be embarrassed that I say that, but that's one of the things that I like to do. So I learn a lot from what other people do. I watch a lot of webinars, like I said, select board meetings. One of the things that I think you have done very well is your budgeting, your capital plan. But that's always changing, especially as the challenges, as you're going up against the Prop 2.5 levy limit. Local receipts are obviously, with the changing economy, sometimes they're restricted. So I'd look to take advantage of new solutions that come in terms of best practices in the industry and build upon that. I also personally am really interested in economic development, something that we are challenged in Rutland just due to our geography. One of the challenges that we have is we don't have, for example, direct access to highways, and that's been one of the challenges that we have. I would love to work with your team, and I know Diane, as the Assistant Town Administrator, as the Economic Development Officer, I would look forward to working with her to further some of the efforts that we have here and some of the projects that are ongoing. I also realize that you have possibly some building projects upcoming. Something that's really interesting to me. We're just starting that. We're starting a municipal services facility, a town hall, and a senior center. We're in the feasibility study, and we'll be going to 30% design phase at an upcoming town meeting, hopefully. I would look forward to participating in those projects, just to name a few. But I know you've got a lot going on, so looking forward to also just making the board look good, making town staff look good in terms of everything that's going on. I believe that I can just continue to build upon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa.
I'm going to vary from the paper question first. So I see that you were in Rutland, and it's been a little bit more than a year and a half. So why are you ready to move into a new situation in such a short period of time? Especially with, there's so much to be done down there, and starting off, and you're bringing in great ideas that you create them from the ground up, where we are ensconced in. But tell me about that choice.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned just in my opening comments, something like Northborough has always been very interesting to me from a professional opportunity to further my interests and skills. But I had to think a lot about, what a potential transition from Rutland would look like. Obviously, I think there's some of my personal values. I don't just think for myself right now. I have my wife, and we've got a couple of dogs at home, and we would love to hopefully start a family someday. So thinking about that rather than just me personally. But I think professionally, I am always looking to grow. And while I think I've accomplished a lot already in the 18 months that I've been in Rutland, I look at the opportunities here and some of the work that can be done here, and it's very exciting to me to be able to continue that. So I don't know if that directly answered your question.
No, give me an example.
Sure.
Give me an example of what you think. Well, first, you talk about Northborough, but give me a little bit more coloring of what you see when you come here, what you felt when you would use us, some examples of what you bring back to Rutland, and then what you would do to start to take what you've already had and improve what we need to have improved.
Sure. So interestingly enough, I split my time. My mom lived in Marlborough, and I spent most of my time in Gardner. But I spent a lot of time growing up actually in Northborough, and actually I just took a select board meeting in your library. So I had an opportunity to have had an opportunity over just tonight and over the years growing up, and whether it's going to the Commons and the shopping center, and just spending time. I think you have a lot of assets in terms of your recreational assets and opportunities for folks. You provide a lot of great services as a full-service community to the residents. So I view that as a really interesting opportunity to engage in a little bit more. Again, some of the challenges that we have in terms of whether it's funding or just the governance structure overall in Rutland is a little bit challenging, whereas you're doing a lot of that good work here. And that is really attractive to me professionally, to be able to continue on that. I also, as I mentioned, I think that building projects are kind of interesting. I had an opportunity as a member of the town manager's team. We built a new fire station, our fourth fire station in the town of Acton. So I have experience in capital projects and advancing those, going to special town meeting, preparing the presentations, and asking for voter approval, and then going through the construction management and development phase, and ultimately we had a very exciting ribbon cutting for that fourth fire station. So I think there's a lot there, but I think balancing the expertise of your town staff, leveraging I think what the residents want, balancing obviously making sure that we're responsible to the taxpayers, but advancing the goals of the select board is my most important and exciting opportunity that I'm looking forward to.
Thanks.
Mike?
Thanks. So, question: when with Rutland or with Acton, even maybe with the best intentions or goals, that something went wrong, didn't go the way you wanted it to go. Could you describe a situation like that and how you approached it, or what happened after that?
Sure. So one of the challenges that we have in Rutland is a lot of deferred maintenance and failing critical infrastructure. Most recently, over the winter, I got a call from the executive director of Devereux, which is a private school that specializes in education for students with autism. Single access in and out. And there was a culvert that failed on the rail trail that completely flooded the roadway, restricting access to the school. School buses weren't willing to go there. One of my first calls was to our state senator and our state representative. And then also the rail trail, which actually the culvert was housed, is maintained by the Wachusett Greenways, a nonprofit society that manages the rail trail. Within 2 weeks, we had a plan from the rail trail. We had representatives from DCR, Fish and Wildlife, DOT in some respects, and Mass DEP to implement into action a plan for design and construction. Within 30 days, we had a full design, and within 60 days, we actually had complete reconstruction of that culvert. That issue was resolved, again, within 60 days. I think that speaks to quick action, relations with our legislative delegation and other state agencies to get projects done, but also responsive to community needs, especially in an emergency circumstance. So, but I can say that, especially in local government, I know Diane and Tim and anyone else who's been around for a while, some days feels like things are perfect, and then other days there's a lot going on. So, but I think that I kind of rely on my interpersonal skills and my contacts and network to advance projects or initiatives and respond to situations as they arise.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have you had any experience with legal situations that have arisen in the past that you can talk to us a little bit more about?
Can speak more detail in executive session, but yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I apologize. How would you ensure compliance with our town bylaws?
Great question. So we just obviously, as I mentioned, established our first set of bylaws, so we didn't have a lot to rely on. So we relied especially a lot on general law. So one of the things that I am guided on in my role as town administrator, but also I think is very important as the advisor to the select board and other boards and commissions, is to make sure that recommendations or guidance that I have from myself on behalf of town staff is in compliance with general law, bylaws, your town charter. So there's issues that arise in terms of whether it's following a process for our budget process, for example. Our budget process spells out a very strict timeline for when town administrator, town staff develop their plan, present that to finance committee, capital planning committee, select board, and ultimately the town meeting. So it's one of the first things that, if I had an opportunity to come to Northborough, I'd get a copy of your charter, a copy of your bylaws, try to understand that as comprehensively as possible. But also, we have a very close relationship with our town council, so I speak regularly on a variety of issues that are ongoing in town and make sure that we're adhering to best practices or legal expertise from our town council, and then referring that against bylaws, charter, general laws, any other state or federal laws as well.
Thank you.
So if hired as our town administrator, one of the things that I'm sure you would want to do is assess the organization, is review the structure, meet everybody. Tell us a little bit about how you would go about doing that and how you would report your findings to the select board.
Sure. So first and foremost, I think I'd want to have an initial conversation with the board or with any other supervisory board for what, let's say, for example, it's a respective department that is overseen, for example, by, let's say, the Conservation Commission or Planning Board, and get an idea, high level, what the board is interested in, if there's an interest in, for example, potentially a reorganization plan. I think then I would ask for board support or committee support to advance to some sort of a feasibility study or a needs assessment of the respective department or function of the organization. So, for example, I know that was recently done with the Health and Human Services Department, restructuring some of the departments to more of a centralized format to provide for better delivery of services for the community. I believe you worked with CMRPC for that project. There's certainly other organizations that can provide that document. I would then ask for, let's say, for example, at CMRPC to then, as they did to you folks, report back with their findings based upon feedback of staff, board and commissions, yourself, and then present a deliverable to the board and to the community for what the findings are and initial recommendations are. That's kind of the best practice as a municipal administrator, is to follow that process. But again, I would ask for some sort of overarching guidance from the board for what you would like that process to look like, and then follow that. And then as that process is proceeding, provide consistent updates to the board for how that project or process is going.
Great. Thank you. Julianne.
So you're interested in economic development. And, over the years, I have observed, as many people have observed, that small businesses are, depending on what their business is, are competing with the likes of Walmart, Target, Amazon. How would you help us plan a successful small business or economic development plan that considers that I would say it's a rather big change in all of our lives?
So I think first and foremost, we'd ask the Northborough small businesses, what do they need? What are their needs? I think conducting an economic development or a series of economic development forums would be a great opportunity to engage those businesses and those business owners for, what is working in Northborough? What do they need in terms of resources or assistance? Or what about our governance structure works or doesn't work for them as a small business? I think engaging them and then developing, very similar to my response to, for example, organizational restructuring, is developing some sort of an economic development plan that incorporates the feedback of those businesses. Also, leveraging some of the resources that are available. We have some great agencies not too far. For example, in the city of Worcester, Mass Office of Business Development. We engaged them in the town of Acton, and they assisted us with receiving, it's not the, I'm going to flub this answer, I think it's the equivalent of a downtown business grant. Essentially, it provided financial incentives to small businesses to conduct facade improvements or small loans to get their business up and running. Mm-hmm. I think that that's a great opportunity to identify some of the needs that are demonstrated by those businesses and match those with some state agencies as well. But also recognizing as well, sometimes businesses need infrastructure, so trying to match what we can provide and also leveraging some of those resources like the Community One Stop MassWorks grant program to make sure that they have the resources they need as a business.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Okay, under leadership and management, how have you managed the appointment and removal of a department head in your previous roles, and what approach would you take in Northborough?
Sure. So in the town of Rutland, as the Chief Administrative Officer, I am the appointing authority for most department heads with exception of the fire chief and town accountant. In my short time, I've had the opportunity to appoint a treasurer collector, building commissioner, human resources director, and a few other positions as well. The process that I follow as well is when there's a transition or recruitment period for any of those positions and anything else that comes up. I would obviously notify the board or again those supervisory boards of the transition, spell out my plan for a recruitment process, working obviously with Diane leading the Human Resources Office as well to make sure that it aligns of the needs of the community, and then we kind of go through the traditional recruitment process that you see in most communities as well. We've done it a little bit differently than what we did in Acton. We've done a little bit differently in Rutland. In Acton, every position had 3 rounds of interviews with a whole panel, like here tonight, which even down to brand new firefighter paramedic. There was a panel of folks interviewing those. So I don't know if we would do that for every position. I think it depends on one, adhering to your administrative code that you have as well, but also responding to the needs of the department and making sure that we're aligning employees and their skills with the needs of the department depending on those positions as well. So I believe in making sure the processes are open and transparent. If there's an opportunity for succession planning or internal recruitment, I think that's always great to develop existing employees into those roles, which I know you've done in several instances here in Northborough. But again, there's a kind of a standard process that we all follow that I'd like to continue. And then, of course, if there's any shifting natures in the administrative code, making sure that our processes follow that as well.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, can I just, removal, have you ever fired anybody?
Yes.
Let's take us through that process.
Sure, yeah, so we in Rutland follow through especially our newly established personnel policies. We have kind of a progressive discipline process. I unfortunately have had to remove members of staff. Not the most pleasant experience, but we make sure that there's proper documentation, opportunities to work with the employee, and if it eventually leads to important termination, we do kind of end up following that process. But again, we try to work as much as possible with the employee, obviously depending on the situation as it arises. But I would also adhere to the code or any set of bylaws that you have that spells out that process.
Thank you.
So question, right, town administrator has to answer to, right, department heads, town staff, select boards, citizens. So how do you organize and balance those priorities? How are you in, two places at once, or, how do you go about that?
I try to get really good at my calendar. No, that's the most challenging role, or that's the most challenging component, or one of the most challenging components of these jobs. We got to be great listeners as well, making sure that before I move on and continue and try to get the work done, making sure I have a deep understanding of what is being requested. So, as much as I want to be Superman and be in many places as possible, I recognize also that being openly communicative about my schedule and my availability and making sure that I can give, whether it's a department, a board, a community member, the time that I believe and I know that they deserve. So I also spend time in settings where other people are, whether it's staff. So I try to connect with folks as much as I can on a day-to-day basis. The last thing I'm going to do is hang out in my office all day. I believe it's important to get out into the community, talk with staff, talk with members of the community. I hold a monthly coffee talk at the senior center, for example, opportunity to connect with the population, let them know what's going on at the staff level, at the board level, and also hear what they're hearing on the street. That's one of my favorite questions is, so what are you hearing this month or this week? And sometimes there's some really interesting things that you hear. But it's an opportunity also sometimes to correct the record if there's an opportunity to do that. And also just being openly communicative and taking advantage of other communication venues to inform the public, the board, about what is happening. We established our very first, for the month of September, this is one of my goals, to establish a town newsletter, which is a monthly newsletter that we publish, included in our quarterly tax bills, but also published on our website and social media venues. That is my favorite opportunity. The very first page is the town administrator's update. That's my favorite opportunity to, at a high level, talk about what's going on, different projects, different important and significant dates to highlight, to make sure that the community is informed. So, I don't know if that totally answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think close enough.
Okay.
So thank you.
Laura.
Thank you. Can you describe a time when you had to investigate the conduct of an employee? What was your approach and what was the outcome?
Yeah, so very similar to the to this question about, I guess just overall employment. We also follow kind of the standard investigatory process to get as much facts as possible with when we receive, whether it's a comment or complaint about an alleged action, making sure we interview. And I think to the point about being a great listener is to get all the facts as much as possible and produce either some sort of a memo document, either for the file or to present to the community based off of some of those practices. There's also instances sometimes when we as staff are too close, recognizing that sometimes there's a need to bring someone from the outside to investigate. We've had to do that in Rutland, unfortunately, and that those findings were then presented, in this case, to the board in an executive session for them to consider.
Can you elaborate when you say an outside source?
Yeah, so kind of like an independent investigator, if you will. I've used opportunities to work with nearby town administrators to conduct an investigation on behalf of either myself or, at that time, we didn't have a human resources officer at the time. So we had kind of an independent investigator come, take a look at the situation, and produce a formal report for myself and the community to consider.
Thank you.
I want to build on you started to talk about the communications and the monthly newsletter, and I'm intrigued about putting something into a tax bill, because sometimes we're told you can't put anything else in a tax bill, so.
You gotta pay a little bit more for postage.
Yeah. How do you see communications changing and growing, and how would you try to deal with that? Because obviously the internet now is old. Social media is how everyone gets their information. Local press is dwindling. I love our local reporter, by the way. I'm sure she's watching this, but there aren't many local reporters left. How do you see that happening and growing? And if you had the opportunity to do more than a monthly newsletter for consistent communications from the town to the public, how would you handle that?
Yeah, communication's huge. I think, especially a town like Northborough where there's a lot going on. I think the best thing that a local government can do is try to meet as many people where they are. So whether it's on social media, whether it's reading the Community Advocate or the Telegram, or I don't know if we talk to the Globe, but maybe if necessary, trying to meet them where they are. We do not have a fully staffed cable department. In the town of Rutland, we have, we kind of rely very much on part-timers to essentially record the meetings. I would love to be able to produce community access television programming, whether it's a weekly, monthly, whatever the recurring opportunity is to talk to the residents of Northborough in that respect from a community access television or regular programming. I also have attended many community events. We had, over the summer, we have a very popular summer concert series that I attend. And have an opportunity to engage with the residents of Rutland. I know that some communities also do a lot of tabling at community events, so whether it's at, Apple Fest or any other event where there's an opportunity to sit down and present some materials or information to the community, that's something I would look forward to develop or continue here in Northborough. But again, try to take advantage of social media venues. I know obviously you have a social media presence here. We'd look to build upon that and develop. We received a community compact grant in Rutland to develop a communication strategy. That's something that was very beneficial to Rutland, and developing that strategy also assisted us with updating our town website and making sure that folks know the official source to go to for the town of Rutland on social media and our town website. So. But again, wherever there's an opportunity, if you as board members say, hey, Austin, there's something going on this weekend, I think it would be a really good opportunity to be there. I'll bring one of my dogs. I'll bring my wife. We'll go and have an opportunity to engage with the public.
Thank you.
So, Austin, in your cover letter, you mentioned that you got an award-winning public transportation, you instituted an award-winning public transportation program in Acton.
Yes.
Could you, well, I guess we have to be brief, tell us how you identified the need for that and how you implemented it, and how did it end up looking?
Yeah, so full disclosure, the program was already existing. Acton, very similar to Rutland, and I've actually implemented that in Rutland as well. Hasn't won an award yet, but we're getting there. Acton, like Rutland, was on the outside of our regional transit authority service boundary. We received very limited services. Most of it was kind of paratransit services from, in Rutland's case, it's WRTA. In Acton's case, it was a Lowell Regional Transit Authority. We're on the very end of the service boundary. We're actually in between two different regional transit services. So Acton, many years ago, implemented local funding and through user fees and some other grant opportunities, actually boosted and developed their own public transportation program. And they actually tied it to public health, because lack of access to transportation is actually a public health issue. Think about some of the folks that take probably some of the WRTA services here. Might be your seniors, might be some folks who don't have resources in terms of having their own vehicle to access medical trips or needs. So Acton developed that program and went from essentially one van from 8 to 3 to Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 every day. We did almost 20,000 trips and continued that level of service through the pandemic. One of the things that I'm proud of in Acton was we also recognized that not everyone not everyone's needs are between 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So we received a grant to pilot with, and this was also during the pandemic, to partner with local taxi companies, where the town actually subsidized local taxi trips to enhance some of those trips that are critical. So getting some of our most vulnerable residents to the medical trips on the weekends, or getting some of our students to work, for example. So that was a very successful program that they have since continued and built upon. And recognizing the same needs exist in Rutland, we actually partnered with WRTA. They donated an extra van to us, and we have since received a grant to build on that program, hire drivers, and we have started rolling out that program as well, run at the local level. So utilizing the resources at the Regional Transit Authority and recognizing that there's something that we can do in response to some of the needs of our residents.
Impressive, thank you.
Lisa?
Okay, let's see. Okay, describe your experience with preparing and submitting annual budgets and capital outlay programs. How would you approach this task in Norfolk?
My favorite time of the year. Actually, tonight to my board, I presented a very, very high level, right, it's very early, multi-year financial model to demonstrate to the board where I believe we are based off of some very conservative projections for revenues and expenditures. So we kind of start the process right around now. We have already reached out to town departments to solicit their capital project needs. We then give them about a month working with them collaboratively to solicit quotes or update some of their existing capital requests. We have a capital planning committee and present those projects and work through in developing that proposed capital plan. And then shortly thereafter, I think I have it scheduled when I'm in Greece for my honeymoon, sending out the budget manual to town departments with, high level. This is where we are. These are our initial projections. This is the guidance from the select board and finance committee on, budget requests. And then we'll work through the weeks and months to refine and develop that budget. And then by January, February, March. Actually, this was the earliest Rutland has ever had a proposed budget and capital plan. They used to be like right up until town meeting. Town meeting's in May. We had our budget ready to go in March, and capital plan endorsed by CAPC and FinCom in March, which I was very proud of. I also spent a lot of time. I think I mentioned we had our very first budget book. I believe that getting as much information about town departments is critically important. There's a lot of reading. Spent a lot of resources on printing paper for FinCom and Select Board, but they actually have something tangible that they can take a look at with a 5-year history of expenses, full description of each town department, the services that they provide, goals and initiatives, staffing levels, to inform the public as much as possible about what the proposed budget is and what the budget delivers for the upcoming year. And I know it's very similar, if not pretty much replicates kind of the process that you have here with some slight variations. But kind of starts with where are we going to go and then flows through the process getting to town meeting for eventual adoption.
Can you describe a situation where you had to make difficult decisions involving allocation of resources, town resources, and how you came to that decision?
Yeah, so most if not all of the decisions that I have to make, especially in my role as town administrator, I try to achieve as much consensus as possible, working with town staff, working with the board. High level, for example, the discussion I had tonight is some of our limited resources that we have in terms of revenues. And I think we're all facing significant cost structures in terms of some of our fixed costs. So presenting that very early on so everyone is on the same page and has an understanding of the situation. So one of the decisions that I've had to make just in my year in Rutland is, I'm also trying to get an understanding of where they are from allocation of resources in terms of, we have several different line items allocated to different building accounts. To me, something about that didn't necessarily make sense, so I kind of spent a lot of time working respectively with a public works director and some of the department heads that manage their buildings, and really diving in. So while some of the departments saw essentially a decrease in their budget, we realized that it was actually more from a budget efficiency standpoint to consolidate some of those, right? So instead of, just an exaggeration, 12 different people paying National Grid, we have one bill. Why are 12 different people paying that? So we consolidated some of our energy and utility services accounts. So from a budget standpoint, but also, one of our most important components as an organization is human capital. So I think it also goes to the question about potential restructuring, is to try to get a strategic assessment of the organization and respective department, and if there's a necessity to either add human capital, personnel, people, folks, or shift those to another department. I try to, again, build on consensus and data, and then present that to the community as a proposal or formal strategic assessment.
Thank you.
Thanks. Laura?
Thank you. In your view, what are the most important qualities of a successful town administrator, and how do you embody those?
I think I mentioned already, I think the most important thing is you got to be a great listener, really spending a lot of time. One of the things that I like to do, especially in meetings, department head meetings, select board meetings, is sometimes I want to be the first to speak. Everyone does sometimes, but sometimes I think it's better to be the last to speak to try to get a full idea of where everyone is. It's a little hard when you're starting a meeting, you have to lead the meeting. So at a high level, kind of starting the meeting and setting the agenda, if you will, and then sitting back and seeing what everyone, what everyone thinks. And then, again, as a group, coming to a decision. Obviously, there's some instances where, as the administrator, you have to make a decision, which I'm certainly not afraid to do, but as a collaborator, I think it's most important to try to work with town departments. You have a lot of town staff that have a lot more experience and education and credentials and life skills than I do, and I would rely on them as professional and talented staff to also advise me in my role to make some of those decisions. But it starts with listening, and then using my skills, I think, as my interpersonal skills to get stuff done.
Thank you.
So how do you stay up to date on changes in public administration and laws and everything else? I mean, I assume you go to conferences. I think you're a member of ICMA. Do you do a lot of networking with town administrators in your area? Tell us a little bit about how you keep things moving that way.
So in addition to my nightly routine of watching other towns' meetings, yes, so I'm very active in all those organizations. ICMA, this Saturday I'll be flying to Pittsburgh for the ICMA conference. Great opportunity to network with folks, not just from Massachusetts or New England, but across the country and in some instances internationally. There's great webinars and opportunities at those kind of conferences. Also, I'm a member of GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, so some of the questions about budget and finance or best practices that I've learned have also come from those associations. And I'm a member of the Management Association, Human Resources Association, in Rutland, member of the Small Town Administrators Association. So to the point about managing my calendar as best as possible, trying to make as much as possible. But also one of the greatest things is, and privileges by being a member of those organizations, is I can also send members of my staff to those, because while I love to learn and know everything, I think it's also important to professionally develop and encourage members of the staff. So my former human resources coordinator was very active, and I encouraged her to attend as much as possible for human resources opportunities. Town planner attending, especially some of the most recent changes with accessory dwelling units. He's attended virtually every webinar that's available. So, but I got to lead by example. I think it's important for me to develop myself and encourage members of staff to do the same thing. So, but I am constantly looking and reading resources and articles and best practices and seeing different ideas that other communities have adopted in their respective situations.
Thank you. So we've gone around the room a few times. Does anyone else have any other burning questions to ask Austin? If not, we will turn the tables and ask you to ask us whatever questions you would like to ask us, and let us know of anything else that maybe you were hoping we would ask and we didn't.
Sure. Yeah, so thanks again. I appreciate this opportunity. One of the things that I think my first question when considering this was, I think you went from a very long time town administrator of, I think, almost 20 years, if not 20 years. Obviously, there's a transition to a new individual in this role. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for the new person coming into this role? And I think in the interim, how do you make the transition as smooth as possible, going from a lot of the great work that Tim has continued on behalf of Northborough, and making sure that if I'm fortunate to be successful as the new TA.
Anyone like to take that?
That's a great question.
I do like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving, like any town, but particularly there was a lot of moving parts, and we're trying to do a lot of different things. You could just look at our marathon select board meetings to kind of see we have packed agendas, and there's a lot of, to kind of keep it high level, just a lot of stuff going on. So I think that would be a big challenge, is coming in to a fairly complicated and busy environment. I don't know if you guys would agree or disagree, but
Yeah, we've got a lot going on. There were a lot of projects and processes that had kind of backed up and maybe weren't moving along as fast as we would like. Some due to COVID, and some just due to people being busy. We are over the past year, I think we've done a really good job with Tim's help of getting things really rapidly moving again. The challenge will be, keeping things going and dealing with the new day-to-day challenges that will always come up in any community.
So, sorry.
Oh, I'd love to just piggyback off of that. I think we've got some really great people in the town from a committee perspective, from a staff perspective, and they've got wonderful ideas for things that would really continue to enhance the community. But we need to figure out how to save money for our residents, and the tax burden is a real big issue, especially for those on fixed income. So just really balancing what you want versus what you need versus what we can afford. And we do have some huge capital projects that are going to really play into that. So it's going to be, I don't know that there's an end to that statement, other than it's a big thing to be aware of. And something that we've been very fastidious as a board about is just really watching how we're spending every penny. So I like the question, though. Thank you for asking that one.
So I kind of have an idea. I think the saying used to be you have to remind people or tell people 3 times about, a point you want to make, and people now say maybe it's 4, 5, 6. But I think, and you touched upon this in one of your answers, that just keeping that communication open, and I have to say, as it's interesting, your comment when you said at a meeting you would like to give your opinion first, but you're more apt to sit back and really listen. Listening is a huge skill, and I think that is something that the next town administrator will have to do a lot of, especially early on.
Right. So obviously I know you've got your big fire station vote. And I know that Tim's done a lot of good work. I obviously saw the agreement with Marlboro. Other than those two, what's the next big project after that?
One of our elementary schools, we're just starting the feasibility process, or technically the needs assessment process. We had the first building committee meeting of that last week. And so that will go through needs assessment, presumably with MSBA's blessing, feasibility. I expect that to happen. And then we'll go to the town. So that would be the next large capital project. There are a lot of large non-capital projects, or projects that have a capital component but don't have the multiple tens of millions of dollars of price tag on them. Downtown revitalization is a big one that we are, I think, struggling with. I think we're making good steps, but it's hard to coalesce everyone around a process, and, around how to spend the money the right way without overspending to make that happen. We have at least 2, soon 3, once the fire station moves, buildings that the town will own that are vacant. We own White Cliffs, which you may have heard of. We own the building colloquially referred to as the Old Town Hall, which it technically isn't because the Old Town Hall burned down and was rebuilt, but it's a major physical fixture downtown that we've got to figure out what to do with. The town recently took re-ownership of that a little over a year ago. And as I mentioned, once the fire station moves, the fire department moves to the new station, we'll have that existing station that we need to do with. So figuring out what to do with those properly, whether they be repurposed for other municipal functions or sold or leased, or the town becomes a landlord for different things, any combination of those are important things that we need to work on.
Those all sound like very exciting initiatives.
That's all.
And those are just the ones I can.
Couple.
Yeah, just
Actually, I forget.
right off the top. Right just off the top of my head.
Yeah, just a few. Well, I appreciate it, taking the time, and thanks again for this great conversation. I really appreciate the work that you've done. I think just as a fan of local government, I give a lot of kudos to this board and the community, Tim and staff for everything that you've done, and I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to hopefully working with you at some point.
Great. Thank you
Thank
for
you
coming
for
in.
coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So just procedurally, we've got a couple more interviews on Thursday, and then after that meeting, Tim will communicate. We'll ask Tim to communicate out to you whatever next steps that we've got going on. We do know you have some travels coming up in the very near future, important travels.
I'll try to make sure my phone's on if necessary. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Nice to see
take
you.
care.
Should go to Santorini too. Santorini's the best.
Crete, Athens, Santorini. That's where we're
You're
going.
gonna love Santorini.
Wow.
Yeah, very good. Great meeting you, Austin.
Thank you.
Nice to
Have a
meet
great
you.
day.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you as well.
Nice job, appreciate it.
Also, I'm a big fan of this town report. We may copy it in Rutland.
Thank you.
Diane, that's
Oh, yeah,
it.
next time.
Diane's baby.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Poach Diane from it.
All right, so we don't have any more interviews tonight. We do have on the agenda, should we want it, to take votes and deliberations and things like that. I think, given that we have 3 more interviews scheduled for Thursday, it probably is best to just forego those unless someone wants to, think otherwise. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else we need to do. What we'll do again on Thursday is we'll get together, we'll talk for a couple of minutes before the first interview. If there are any additional processes we want to change, anything else we want to do differently that night, it might be better to do right at the beginning of that meeting rather than tonight, but if anyone has anything else.
I'll fix the air conditioning before Thursday.
Okay.
I don't like it this way.
Not bad.
No, it really wasn't too bad.
Thursday is supposed to be chilly, isn't it? Rain or
Open a
something.
window.
No, the heat won't work, right? All right, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to
Oh.
adjourn. Oh,
So,
yeah,
back to Apple Fest.
okay.
Do we have a banner?
We have a banner,
Okay, who has the banner?
I do.
Oh, excellent,
And
okay,
it says select board on it.
okay.
It's got a poll and the whole thing, and
All right.
I've got a
Well,
lot,
so you
way
have
more
everything.
candy.
You have-
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. We have to find, hopefully, children to hold the banner, given that it'll just be the 3 of us. And these are things that we don't normally need to discuss on camera, but that's fine. Do we want to have a set attire? In years past, there was a standard Board of Selectmen shirt, and then last year we decided to not update that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kristen didn't like red.
Yeah, we can also talk offline. That's not official town business, so, we can chat amongst ourselves with that.
Think about that one,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
Linda, for the question about the proclamation, is that something we'll discuss on Monday, or do you want us to mention it now?
No, I just wanted to know if I had a response on that.
Okay,
I was gonna do it, so as long as you're going to that.
okay, just so the rest of the board is aware, I'll mention this on my report on Monday. I'm going to be going to the Northborough High School Alumni 151st reunion later this month, and there will be a proclamation that we'll be signing, but just so that everybody's aware, that's kind of time sensitive that you should be aware of.
Okay.
Okay.
Great, just let us know, we'll sign it. Okay.
Thank
Is there a
you.
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Julianne, seconded by Laura to adjourn. All those in favor say?
Aye.
Aye, I see that as unanimous. We are adjourned 8:16 PM. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much to audience members for joining us tonight.
Thank you.